You have seen this photograph. A long neck, a small head, grey water and nothing else in the frame to tell you how big any of it is. It ran in the Daily Mail on the 21st of April, 1934. And for the next 60 years it was the best evidence anyone had that something lives in Loch Ness. It is a toy. 14 inches of clockwork submarine bought in a branch of Woolworths with a head and neck stuck on the conning tower. Here is the part that makes it worth an episode. 2 different men confessed to it, 19 years apart, and the first time nobody listened. But I did not come here for the monster. I came for the rock that photograph made famous, the broken tower that nearly 500,000 people walked past last year on their way to look at the water. Because the castle is not a backdrop to this story. The castle is the reason the story could happen at all. This is Urquhart Castle. Let's find out who invented the Loch Ness monster. Start with where you are standing. Loch Ness fills the Great Glen, the geological fault that cuts Scotland open from one coast to the other so cleanly that you can trace it on a map with one finger. About 15 miles southwest of Inverness, a low promontory pushes out into the water where a side glen meets the loch. It is called Strone, and somebody cut a ditch across its neck which turned the point into an island of rock. You crossed that ditch on a causeway, over a drawbridge, and if the land approach was shut, boats came in underneath, through a watergate at the loch's edge. What stands there now is a wreck, a roofless shell, footings of a great hall and a chapel laid out in the grass, like a plan drawn at full size. And at the far end, still 5 stories up, the Grant Tower. 466,000 people came last year. That makes this fragment the 3rd most visited site Historic Environment Scotland looks after, behind Edinburgh, behind Stirling. And a great many of them are standing in it facing the other way. So, the spring of 1933. A woman named Aldi Mackay is driving along the loch with her husband. She is the manageress of the Drumnadrocheat Hotel, which is about 2 miles from where you are standing. And she sees something in the water. She describes it afterwards as an enormous creature with the body of a whale rolling. I am going to give you the date the story entered the world, rather than the date she looked at the water, because the sources disagree about the second one and all agree on the first. On the 2nd of May 1933, the Inverness Courier ran it, written up by a water bailiff and part-time correspondent called Alex Campbell under the headline Strange Spectacle on Loch Ness. A body, he wrote, resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. The Daily Mail picked it up, then the national press, then the world. And here is where nearly every film about this loch tells you the same tidy thing, that a new road had just been built along the shore, that it brought workers and motorcars to a lonely, empty stretch of water for the very first time, and that people finally started looking. It is not quite true. The road was not built in 1933. It was upgraded, widened, straightened, blasted back into the hillside. You can still see the rock cuttings. There was already a road, and the loch was never lonely. The writer Ronald Binns calls that idea the myth of the lonely loch, because since 1822, this water has been part of a shipping lane. Thomas Telford ran the Caledonian Canal down the Great Glen, sea to sea, Inverness to the Atlantic. Only about 1/3 of it is dug. The rest of it is lochs. The rest of it is this. Victorian tourists sailed through here in comfort, watching the Highlands go past for 111 years before anybody saw a monster. What the road did was narrower and more interesting. It put people on the shore in their own cars, stopping where they liked. At the exact moment, 2 newspapers discovered how much a monster was worth. The Daily Mail did what a newspaper does with a story like that. It sent a man to catch it. Marmaduke Wetherell, big game hunter, filmmaker, a man with a reputation to trade on. And in December 1933, he found what he had been sent for. Enormous footprints on the shore, leading down into the water. Casts were taken. The casts went to the Natural History Museum, and the museum came back with an answer that ended his career in about a sentence. The prints were identical, every one of them, because every one of them had been made with the same object, a dried hippopotamus foot, the kind people used to keep by the front door as an umbrella stand. The male turned on him in public. 4 months later, on the 21st of April, 1934, that same newspaper ran the photograph. The neck, the head, the grey water, credited to a respectable London surgeon named Robert Kenneth Wilson, which is why the world has called it the surgeon's photograph ever since. A doctor has no reason to lie. That was the whole point of him. Wilson did not take it. It was Wetherell's revenge on the paper that humiliated him, and the monster in it was about a foot of plastic wood molded into a head and a neck and fixed to the conning tower of a clockwork toy submarine from Woolworths in Richmond. Now, when did we find that out? Here is the answer everyone gives. 1994, 60 years. On the 12th of March, the Sunday Telegraph published the account of Christian Spurling, Wetherell's stepson, the man who actually built the model. He had told 2 researchers, David Martin and Alistair Boyd, how it was done. He died before it ran. 60 years. It is a good number. It is also wrong, because on the 7th of December, 1975, the Sunday Telegraph, the same newspaper, ran a column in which Ian Wetherell, Marmaduke's son, said plainly that he had been there, that he went up to the loch with his father and a man named Maurice Chambers, that they staged it. That was 19 years earlier, and the world read it and carried on believing the photograph. A confession is a quiet thing. It cannot compete with the photograph everybody was still waiting for. One more detail, and I am going to leave it where it lies. The 2 confessions do not entirely match. The 1975 account describes a head and neck of rubber tubing. Spurling described plastic wood. I am telling you the record has a seam in it. But there is one piece of evidence I have not touched, and it is 1400 years older than everything else. Because there is an old account, a genuinely old one, and it is usually handed to you as the moment the monster first appears, 14 centuries before anyone thought to sell a ticket over it. It comes from the life of St. Columba, written by Adomnan, abbot of Iona, around the year 697. Columba comes to a river crossing in the country of the Picts. Local people are burying a man who was seized and bitten while he was swimming. They had got his body back out of the water with a hook. And Columba's response to that information is to send one of his own monks into the same river, a man named Lugne Mokumin, who takes off everything but his tunic and goes in. The thing comes up off the bottom. It roars and it goes after him with its mouth open. And the saint raises his hand, makes the sign of the cross in the air and says,
"Thou shalt go no further, nor touch the man. Go back with all speed."
It is genuinely 1400 years old, and 3 things about it almost never survive the retelling. The first, Adomnan was writing around 130 years after the event he is describing. He is not a witness. Nobody in that book is a witness. The second, it does not happen in Loch Ness. It happens in the River Ness, the river that runs out of the loch and through Inverness to the sea. Different water. And the third one you can read off the page yourself. This is not a sighting report. It is a miracle story, and you do not have to take my word for that, because Adomnan tells you what it is for in his own last sentence. The heathens who were watching, he writes, were forced by the greatness of this miracle to magnify the God of the Christians. So the oldest evidence for the Loch Ness monster is a 7th century advertisement for a 6th century saint, set in the wrong water, which leaves the rock. Everything I have told you so far depends on one fact about this place, and it is the same fact in every century. The Great Glen is a route. Before there were roads, the loch was the road. 23 miles of deep water running dead straight through the worst country in Scotland to walk across. If you held a strong point on that shore, you did not control a field. You controlled movement through the whole Highlands. That is why there is a castle on this rock. And people worked that out long before the stone went up. A fragment of a Pictish brooch was found on this site. Late 700s, early 800s. That is not the jewelry of somebody passing through. So hold the two things side by side. 1822, Telford's canal put steamers on this water. 1933, the rebuilt road puts motor cars along the edge of it. And 700 years before either of them, somebody dug a ditch across a promontory for exactly the same reason. The castle and the monster are not two stories that happen to share a view. They are the same story. Both of them are what happens when a road runs past. The stone castle enters the written record in 1296. Not gently. Edward I of England takes it in the invasion that opens the wars of Scottish independence. He puts in an English constable. The next year, Andrew de Moray ambushes the man, besieges the castle, attacks it at night, and fails. By 1298, the Scots have it back. By 1303, the English take it again. That is the rhythm here for decades. Held, lost, held. Then comes the year that tells you what this rock was worth. 1333. After the Scottish defeat at Halidon Hill, English power closes over the country almost completely. Almost. Count what is left. There are 5 castles in the whole of Scotland still held by the Scots. Dumbarton, Lochleven, Kildrummy, Loch Doon, and this one. A ruin on a highland loch that most people photograph on their way to look for a plesiosaur was, for a while, 1/5 of unconquered Scotland. Peace with England did not make this a quiet place. For the next 200 years, the danger came from inside Scotland. From the MacDonald lords of the Isles, the Sea Kings of the West, pressing their claim to the earldom of Ross straight down the Great Glen, which meant straight past this rock. They took it and stripped it again and again. In 1509, James IV granted the whole barony to John Grant in perpetuity with instructions to put the castle and the estate back in order. The Grants built the tall tower at the northern end, which is the tower in every photograph ever taken of this place. And it is, by some distance, the newest large thing here. Then 1545. The Great Raid. MacDonalds and Camerons take the castle and spend about a month methodically emptying it and the glen around it. And this is where it stops being a raid and starts being an inventory. Because the list survives. 3,337 sheep, 2,355 cattle, 2,204 goats, 371 horses, 122 pigs, 64 geese, 1,700 sacks of oats, 3 great boats, 20 guns, 12 feather beds, pots, pans, tables and chairs, and the doors. They took the doors off the castle, with the iron locks still on them. You are looking at the reason the Great Hall is a rectangle of grass. Most ruined castles die slowly. Neglect, weather, a century of nobody caring. Urquhart is supposed to have been killed on purpose. 1689. James VII has been driven out. William and Mary are on the throne. And this castle is garrisoned for the last time in its life, holding the Great Glen for the new government against the Jacobites who want the old king back. In 1692, the soldiers march away. And the story is that they blew the gatehouse up behind them so that it could never be held against the crown again. I would love to tell you that plainly. I cannot. Because the organization that owns this castle and looks after it will not tell you that plainly either. Here is Historic Environment Scotland on their own pages about their own castle.
Many tales tell of the gatehouse being deliberately blown up in 1692. There is no concrete evidence of the explosion ever happening due to there being no charred stone remnants.
No scorched stone. not one piece. What is certain is that it was left open and undefended, and that afterwards people carted the cut stone away to build with. And then, in 1715, a storm came down the Great Glen and tore a whole face off the Grant Tower. That is the missing wall. That is why you can see straight into the cellars. Not gunpowder. Weather. So here is where we finish. The most famous thing about this loch was a 14-inch toy from a high street shop, photographed by a man taking revenge on a newspaper, and confessed to twice before anybody was willing to hear it. The monster brought 466,000 people here last year. The monster is not real. The rock they are standing on is. Go up into the Grant Tower and look south down the Great Glen. 23 miles of water running straight through the mountains like a road. Because that is what it is. It brought the Picts. It brought Edward's army. It brought Telford's steamers and the motor cars and the newspapermen. And in 1933, it brought one of them a monster. Everything that ever happened on this rock arrived by the same road. This has been Stonekeep Atlas. The full record behind this episode is linked at the top of the description. Every date, every source, the complete written guide. If you go, take the first hour after opening. Book the slot because the car park is on the roof of the visitor centre and it fills. And walk down to the water gate before you climb the tower. That is the door this castle actually ran on. And if you want the same trick worked on a different rock, go and look at Mont Saint-Michel next. Everyone repeats that it was never captured, and we found the man who wrote that sentence. And if castles with stories like this one are your kind of history, subscribe. The Stonekeep Atlas archive already holds 100 of them, from the Rhine to the Loire, with more episodes on the way.